Okay, we can go ahead and get started. I think most people they may still trickle in, but thank you for joining us. We have a bit of a small group this morning, but we'll do a quick intro. My name is Michele Null, and I'm in the Ansible business unit, and I spend most of my time focusing in the domain of Edge. I also work a lot with partners, as you can imagine, in the world of Edge. So prior to Red Hat, I've spent the past 10 or so years actually in the IoT and Edge realm. Prior to Red Hat, I was in the advanced analytics AI ML world, and just very passionate about Edge in general. And I think that's where, we always hear the buzzword, of course, of digital transformation, but just the amount of innovation and work happening out of the Edge is world-changing and life-changing and super exciting. So I love this topic, and I'm joined by my co-presenter and colleague, Chad Furman, who is equally, if not more, excited about Edge. So you can do a quick intro.
Sure. And Michele is really like the one who takes all of the things out of my brain and the things that we engineer and puts out there and makes it into a palatable format. So don't let her, if you had to see what I created as slides, it would be a bunch of stick figures with lines, and nobody wants to look at that. So I'm the Senior Principal Product Manager for Edge and Controller in the Ansible business unit. But before, I'd say 2 months ago, I was a customer just like a lot of you guys. So I was the enterprise architect at ExxonMobil. I ran an automation team for many years at a little company that people remember called Radio Shack, where we actually did have an automation team in the 90s. So I've been doing this for a very, very long time. And yes, I'm very passionate about Edge, but I'm very passionate about how you really cannot do Edge without automating it, because there are not human beings there most of the time to do the things that you need to do.
So thus our title, Success of the Edge Starts with Automation. You go to the next. Are you clicking? Okay.
You're in control.
I'm in control. So, we're going to do, just in terms of the format for today, so we'll do an overview of the market perspective, and then Chad's going to talk a little bit about Ansible Automation Platform specifically. And then I think what most people love to hear about is our case studies, and so we have some exciting ones to share in that regard. So just in general, we'll start with what is Edge and Edge automation. And we have the slide in here because, as you have probably experienced, there's different definitions of Edge in the market, and that certainly varies based on the industry that you're in. Some people don't even call it Edge. So we like to start off by saying when we use the term Edge in this presentation and at Red Hat, we're referring to anything outside the data center. It could be a retail store, a factory floor, oil rig, but anything, all the way to essentially where the data is being generated.
So real quick, while we have this slide up there, is there anything we're missing on here? What do you guys call Edge? Is there anything that we're like, is Edge something different to you in your world? I actually had someone yesterday tell me that Edge to them was things not in the cloud, which I was like, okay, I'm good with that. I realize it's right after the keynote. Nobody is frowning or giving me a thumbs down, so we're good. Awesome. Okay. I will try and get participation, so be prepared. You can just turn away and ignore me. It's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, sir?
Edge to us is whatever is the differentiator between public and private networks.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So it could be, like a DMZ, that's our edge. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a remote site, which is actually one of the confusions we had when bringing in Ansible, because your definition of edge is so different than ours.
That's actually really cool. So if you guys didn't hear that, so their definition of edge is what's in between the private and public networks, or things like DMZ could be included in that. So that's cool. That's and that's why I asked this question, because I feel like we need to be addressing these more towards what customers think of Edge than versus what Red Hat thinks of Edge, because you are the ones that are going to use our product. So we need to make sure that we're talking in the same words that you use. So thank you.
And we do like to make this interactive, as you can tell, so feel free to raise hands or chime in at any point. So we have a quote up here from IDC, and it comes as no surprise that IT automation would be seen as a top priority for Edge investment. And if you think of the very nature of Edge, you can see why that is, right? We're talking about Edge locations where there's going to be little or likely no IT staff, and so certainly IT automation is going to be top of mind to address. And so what are some of the challenges? So I'll talk a little bit about the challenges that we're seeing. These will come probably as no surprise to you, but we can talk to you about what they mean in the context of automation. And then Chad is going to take you through what this means in terms of Ansible automation platform specifically. So security and safety, always number one on any edge report or study or anything that you see, and there's no surprise for that. But in terms of automation, we're talking about things like running patches, and updates and maintenance and so forth automatically, again, without having to send a technician to the site. Reducing downtime, so think about network here and network management and being able to simplify that. And then efficiency, so really having that automated analysis and monitoring and alerting, and so you're reducing human error and things like that as a result. And repeatability is one that Chad and I talk about a lot, and just making sure that everything has the ability to be replicated across all of the edge environments.
So are we missing anything on this one? Are there things that are more important to you than these 5? We try and distill it, of course, but okay. I got nods, I got the no's, so awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. And so Chad is going to go through now Ansible automation platform specifically.
So real quick, just raise of hands. Is everybody here familiar with what Ansible automation platform is? Okay, cool. I asked that because sometimes I go into this and start talking about Ansible and they're like, I have no idea what that is. So I figure at a Red Hat conference, we're probably good to go here, but wanted to make sure. So thinking about extending it to the edge, and I actually am glad because we do start with the cloud, and I always go left to right and right to left on this, but we're in America, we need to move this slide to go left to right, but it's okay. So everything that Red Hat's always talked about was cloud and core data center and regional data center, but now we're really looking at and spending a lot of time in manufacturing and productions and retail and things like that. And that's where we're really starting to get into edge server, edge gateway network, edge endpoint. I'm not a salesperson, but there are different pricings depending on how far edge you guys get out there. So we have also thought that through, because we know that those devices that are at the far edge you touch once a year. And we want to make sure that this is budgetary restrictions apply when you're deploying 10,000 devices. Okay. This is my favorite slide because I spent a really long time making this. And
he said he doesn't make slides. He did a good job on this.
No, I didn't make this one. Daphne did. My slide was gross. She made it pretty.
Daphne's the other in our trio of Edge team and the Ansible business unit. She's awesome.
So these are all the things that we all know and love from a data center perspective that are actually, if you're wanting to do edge successfully, so one of our other cohorts who we work with came from 25 years at Walmart, and I did retail, and we always talk about these things. The big thing they worry about at Walmart, of course, is melting ice cream, because if it's hilarious, but it's true, because a point of sale system goes down, person can't check out, ice cream's melting. People don't want their ice cream to melt. Like that's no bueno. So the way that they did it and the way I did it everywhere that we worked is all of those same services that you rely on and expect to be there in a data center need to be accessible from your remote locations. That's real hard when you're talking about remote well pads and things like that, but when you're talking about a retail store or your remote data centers, you need to have DNS. I'm sorry, everybody. DNS needs to be there. Although I talked to a manufacturer the other day and they're like, nope, we hard IP everything. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. But you also need to have PKI because you have applications. Hopefully everybody's running HTTPS. You want to have secure SSL connections. Those need to be able to talk to your certificate authority. You need to be able to revoke them if those are not there as well. So PKI is I don't think you ever knew what PKI was until you started working with me, and you're probably sick of hearing me talk about it at this point. But taking all of those things that you have over here on the right-hand side and making sure that it's all accessible so you can get to containers running SSL and your application layers, and then having secure data transfers and pulling that data, or what we're seeing a lot more of now is, and if you saw the Edge booth demo, a lot of people are doing a lot of that data analytics at the edge, training at the edge. But you still have to take that subset of data and either train it centrally or visualize it, because, as cool as it is to see how many bad beer bottles we had go, you want to know how many bad beer bottles at a KPI level so you can report that back up to your shareholders. All right, so supported content you can trust. we have tons and tons of content out there, and one of my big goals this year is that we're working not just to provide content, but we're actually working to provide solutions with this content to you guys. So my biggest goal for Ansible as a platform is to make it super easy for you guys to use. So a lot of this content, we're trying to figure out how we have it accessible to you in the platform. So no more go load a project, go build an execution environment, all the fun things you have to do today. But how about it becomes more of a console experience where it's like, oh, I'm going to automate VMware. I'm going to automate Edge. It just populates into the platform for you. Is this you or me? Oh, this one's me? Okay. So enterprise use cases. So of course we're Red Hat. So the big one that I've focused on for the past year-ish is what was announced as Red Hat Device Edge. So the ability to push out a OS tree-based or immutable type of RHEL operating system, because a lot of these edge sites might be hanging off a telephone pole, might be on a well pad in the middle of nowhere, and what happens when somebody walks away with that? You don't want people to be able to get to intellectual property on there. They need to be encrypted, they need to be secure, and at the end of the day, hopefully those are inexpensive. If somebody walks away with it, they just got the hardware, but they didn't walk away with things that you don't want them to have. So we've built this whole kind of life cycle management in an Ansible collection called Infra OS Build that we will be making into a certified collection in August with the release of Microshift, where you can literally build all of the different bits and pieces into this to have true application lifecycle management, OS lifecycle management, and build all of the things that you need, whether you're in a transportation company or you're at a well pad. Everything you need down the application layer can be deployed, whether it's a Kubernetes-based app, Podman, a tarball, doesn't matter. Not that any of us deploy tarballs. Anybody still do tarballs? No shame. Does it provide your business with the money that they need at the end of the day? That's all that matters. Cool.
Yeah, so I'll jump in here. So one of the things that Chad and Daphne and I, who's our other, as I mentioned, partner in crime, is that we, what people want to know the most, right, is what does Edge mean for me in my industry? And while industries can learn from what other industries are doing, we spent a lot of work over the past year, and one of the things involved an ebook where we've got chapters for each industry. We talk a little bit more about what exactly, or where we're seeing the most use cases, right, in terms of the different industries as we talk to customers and partners. So I'll just cover them at a high level, and then as mentioned, we're going to get into a few case studies of what specific customers are doing right after this as well, or in this presentation. So for retail, a lot of what we're seeing now across North America and EMEA as well are around modernizing point of sale systems. So we're seeing a lot of that. Financial services, so a lot of that is automating their application delivery and network security, and that's all the way out to the far edge, the ATM machines, for example. And then in the industrial realm, we're also seeing automating of the application delivery in containers on top of RHEL. And we're also seeing all the way through really the managing and configuring and auditing of, if you're in the industrial realm, you know the term PLC, and HMI devices, human machine interface devices, which Chad mentioned the booth. By the way, if you have not seen the Edge booth, there's an Ansible booth and an Edge booth. The Edge booth actually has a couple of really awesome industrial demos specifically, and one of which you'll see an HMI device if you're not familiar with that.
So if you don't know what a PLC is, the thing that's really cool about that is that's what runs everything from an amusement park ride to a manufacturing robot. And before we did the work with Rockwell on this, the only way to actually do anything with those was to literally connect a serial port into them. And I can tell you, because I've been to manufacturing sites all over the world, watching a guy go around to figure out if the network is configured right on those things with a serial port is awful. But now you can actually just call the Ansible collection that's out there, and now just the silliest things like, is it set up for actual 1000 based Ethernet, which that's a huge problem. Or if they're on a 10 base network, they're set to 10 base. And even things like adjusting spinning. So imagine the Superman ride, they figure out, or Spider-Man ride, they figure out that something's wrong with it, they can immediately go fix it versus shutting it down for hours and sending somebody out there to go plug in and adjust the rotations of the motors. It's pretty cool stuff.
Good
And
example.
I nerd out on these things.
And then a couple of visuals just in between here before we touch on some other industries. So we find that customers tend to like to see kind of the visuals of what we mean. And there, as Chad mentioned, there's different layers of edge and different people look at it differently. The way that we're classifying it and including, pricing structure and quantity wise as well is we have that distributed layer. And so in the example of financial services, that would be like your bank branch server network. And then the far edge, as mentioned, would be all the way out to things like the ATM machines. And what does that mean in manufacturing? Distributed layer would be with that factory server network and then all the way out to the assets on the factory floor. And then retail, similarly, you have the store servers and network. And then, as mentioned, one of the use cases we're seeing a lot of is out to the far edge with those point of sale systems. And then, so transportation, I saw some transportation logos in the audience. So one of the things that we're seeing a lot there is also around application delivery, but also automating intelligent devices and applications. So we're seeing that a lot. We have a good healthcare example in here as well, which we'll get more into, but a lot of that is just really automating that traditional IT infrastructure at the edge. And then telco, and Chad and I were talking recently, so he's actually talked to a lot of telco customers recently who've been looking at using automation around the underlying hardware infrastructure that's supporting 5G. I don't know if you want to touch on that anymore.
5G, 4G, 3G, name your G. But at the end of the day, all of this still runs on a lot of your traditional hardware. So, and actually a lot of the 5G stuff is running on Kubernetes, and depending on who you're purchasing it from, it's kind of a black box Kubernetes. So you can still use Ansible to manage that because we're great at managing Kubernetes at the end of the day. But anything from your DRAC to your network configs to setting up if you're running either virtual or containerized on the RAN, I've seen it at pretty much every major telco in the world. Oh, and the lab the edge booth that's set up, it's actually running on a private 5G that we collaborated with Verizon to set up. So it's all, you can actually go and see what this looks like instead of just looking at slides and talking about cool hand wavy stuff.
Has anyone not been yet to the edge booth? Yeah. If you have been there, anything that stood out to you that was like you didn't, you were surprised to see, or it particularly was intriguing, or yeah. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff happening, and all of it really in conjunction with partners, as is obvious when you think of it an IT landscape or technology landscape from edge to cloud. Is there's a lot of partners that are going to have to be involved in that. It's never going to be just kind of one vendor who has the all-inclusive edge edge to cloud solution. So we're working on
Go look at the Siemens demo and tell Josh that Chad sent you, and tell him you want to pull out a piece of hardware, because that's actually the thing that it's doing. Is you can go
Schneider.
Go to the DCN, which is a distributed compute node, pull it out, and you can watch it use EDA to reconfigure and redistribute the load to adjust the water valves and stuff. It's cool. It's the future of where things are heading. But it's cool to see that happen in spaces, because the Schneider demo is literally what's in every municipality for wastewater management. So this is everywhere, but today it's very, very, very manual.
All right, so let's get into some customer stories. Chad, you want to do Siemens? PKI.
It's PKI. It's never PKI. So we worked with Siemens because, of course, everything they do is running SSL. They're running secure, and they needed a way to automate not just the creation, generation, but the management of pushing all of those certs to the operating system level, to the application level, and then managing those certs and rotating the certs. Because really, what a lot of people do is they'll set that time to live on a cert to be 5 years, which is really, really bad these days. It should be less than 365 days. But this is also why we have outages on the internet all the time. I know where I came from, we had internal outages. I know many of the cloud providers have had different outages over the past years, and it's always because somebody forgot to update a cert. So automating that is extremely important. Well, I talked about Rockwell earlier, but we had an announcement at our Ansible Fest last year, and there will be some big ones at Rockwell Automation Fair this year, but they're literally white boxing Ansible into their product. And if you guys don't know who Rockwell is, they're kind of the people that run all the manufacturing plants in a good chunk of the world. Between them, ABB and Siemens, they're the top three. But they have a product called Plant Packs, which today it sets up VMware infrastructure, it sets up Cisco switches, it sets up their applications, and it takes 2 to 3 weeks for a consultant to do that. Whereas instead, what they're doing is putting Ansible as the underlying layer to do all of this for them, but also offering it to their customers and saying, you know, this automated the Plant Pack stuff, but if you guys want to do other things incorporated with this, go ahead. And this came out of the blue because I was a customer I came from Exxon. We used Rockwell in every single one of our manufacturing plants. And them actually using IT tools to solve OT problems is a very big step in the direction of this whole thing that we've been calling IT-OT convergence for a long time, although their CTO hates that word term. He's like, no, we are taking IT best practices and applying them to OT, which, call it what you want, it's really cool. Alstom. So, do you want this one or you want me to get this one? Is there somebody from, I think there's somebody from Alstom in the audience. Do you want to tell us about what she did?
Sure. I'm going to be leveraging Ansible for distributed applications.
So you're deploying all the apps to all the trains, et cetera, or to?
Not the trains themselves, so we've got edge boxes at the far edge.
Okay.
And we're in this interesting space kind of combining OT and IT. So we provision all these servers that will live at the far edge.
Okay, so kind of on the diagram, it's kind of more of like not the far edge, but kind of the in-between.
Right.
Okay, very cool. Awesome. I'm glad that you were here. You actually could tell the story better than us any day. I owe this man a drink.
Yeah, we're actually, yeah, we could get more involved with our operation platform as well, just to start providing device-based solutions. That's kind of in this collaborative zone where customers don't really know what they want yet, and
Yep.
we kind of been working through that. I think that's where we're heading next, is looking at offering to inventory all the devices,
Yep.
maintain the status, and then start doing what's going on with access.
And you're doing it the right way. You're taking it small chunks at a time and saying, okay, inventory, because today you probably don't have one. And then from that inventory, what versions of software are you running? Yep, very, very cool. Nice. We'll have to talk later.
Schwartz, yeah, I'll take this one. So if you're not familiar with Schwartz, they're the fourth largest retailer. They have over 12,000 stores. They operate in over 30 countries. And so what they were looking to do with automation is really ensuring the consistency in the store management across the stores globally. And they were able, with Ansible, able to implement this centralized strategy across all the stores. So they were able to do improved delivery time for new, innovative digital applications and services. And they were also able, one of the things that was important to them is they needed to be able to support local markets. And they were able to do that with Ansible through decentralized management. And then another thing that was really important to them with Ansible is they really needed to have full end-to-end enterprise support. So they were big proponents of, we have to have Ansible automation platform in order to have that. Any retail customers in the audience? Any edge use cases or thoughts to share?
Okay. I think I know who you guys are. You have fantastic meatballs. That's not an uncommon thing that I hear from a lot of the retailers, is that there are pockets, and depending on what country or who set it up, because there's different integrators that set different things up, that it's just, yep, that is probably one of the biggest challenges, I think, for anyone in retail, especially globally. Cool. I would love to talk to you about that, though. So one thing that I should say about Automation Mesh that most people don't know, that we did not do a great job of advertising, that I've been pushing, is it does not have to be bi-directional. And a lot of people have always come to me and be like, we need this way to connect, but we don't want to have any traffic go in and out. You can actually set up Mesh to only do traffic up, which is very, especially in manufacturing, very important.
Thank you for sharing. All right, Chad, you want to do healthcare?
What is this one? HCA. Oh, yeah. So they're actually doing some cool stuff of pulling in clinical data with this. So they're taking data and, of course, PCI and moving PCI data, or, depending on where you are at. My world was always about GDPR data and data sovereignty, depending if you're in Malaysia or Russia, et cetera. But they automated the ability to kind of get everything and manage the data using Ansible, which I think, if you think about data for healthcare, or if you think about back to AI models and how do you distribute AI models out to many different endpoints, retail is a big one. There's actually a demo of retail using AI to detect the merchandise that you're purchasing. But a big one is, of course, loss prevention. And I talked to a grocery store about this, and they said that their biggest problem is they sell way more bananas than they have in stock. And if you think about it, it's because when somebody goes to purchase a vegetable, I mean, a banana is probably the cheapest thing on there. They throw the banana on, or they throw whatever it is they're actually buying, and then they type banana code, and then they move on. So being able to distribute a model that can detect a banana versus an eggplant versus a mushroom is hard to do across 5,000 locations.
And I think this is a great one to end on, too. I think this is our last case study. And we have time, I believe, about 15 minutes where we can do, some questions and interaction. But I love this healthcare in general, right? Because as I mentioned in the opening, it's like we have Edge, and there's life-changing and literally life-saving. These technologies work together. It can really do some amazing things. And that's why we will continue to live on the edge in our jobs, because it's super exciting. And you've seen that even just with the safety and things working at your previous employer, a lot of dangers there in the industrial realm, and the things that the technologies are doing to make sure that people go home at the end of the day are super.
Well, no, I was speaking to somebody earlier that they're in the healthcare manufacturing business, and if you think about it, they could be creating pacemakers, stents for hearts, things that, one of us that someday hopefully don't have to have, but I would love to know that they have a secure way of doing all of the things that they're doing. So it's cool to see that people are really kind of honing in on the security aspects of Edge, because it's important in the data center. It's real important when you're manufacturing pacemakers. Cool. Is that it?
That is all of
Awesome.
our slides.
Questions?
Or actually, we have.
Chats?
Actually, I shouldn't
Oh.
say that. We had one more. We did add a portfolio, because certainly with Ansible is not the only Red Hat solution involved in Edge. That a lot of customers are starting with Ansible in many cases, but we do have a full Edge portfolio of solutions, and so we're working a lot with the OpenShift team as well as the RHEL team. Chad mentioned Device Edge, which was announced and will be GAing soon, which is more of a portfolio offering.
And that'll actually include Ansible, RHEL, and Microshift. Don't have to use Microshift, don't have to use Ansible, don't necessarily have to use RHEL, but it's a very kind of, we wanted to have a portfolio offering where you can just buy one SKU that handles all your Edge things.
And that's with you as you grow and expand and et cetera. All right. Any questions or, yes?
Sir?
With your partner ecosystem that you had like 55 of those, what can you give examples of like Nutanix?
Nutanix? So, no, it's all good. No, I worked with them when I was a customer quite a bit.
So we're working with them on a pilot and within the healthcare, within the VA. So what have you accomplished with them thus far?
So we have fully certified collections. So if you use Ansible with that collection that they provide to build and do, so the thing that's great about Nutanix, they have their Calm API and everything. So this really talks into the Calm API and the things that they have there. But Nutanix doesn't configure their network. Nutanix doesn't configure all the other bits and pieces that you may need for this. So the way we did it, I'll just tell you how I did it as a customer, because I think that's what is important to you. We used Ansible to call all of the different bits and pieces to make it a full workflow for a deployment at a site. So you deliver a rack of servers with switches, with all the different configurations. It gets all racked up plugged in and mounted. Ansible connects up, sets up your network, sets up your VLANs, builds everything you need on the Nutanix side, so you're just up and running with everything you need. So one way somebody put Ansible to me recently, which I really liked, is we have the ability to take all of the different management consoles and put them all into a single pane of glass where you can just automate all the things.
Is where also when you work with CyberArk.
Yep. Yeah, we obviously work very closely with IBM. And CyberArk, that's what we used where I came from as well, and it works great. Yeah, we checked in and checked out usernames and passwords, and when I say checked in and checked out, used it, reset the password every time we used one. Yeah, no problem. That's a very good question. Anyone else?
Questions, thoughts, use cases to share?
I have a question. So like with existing systems potentially being on RHEL 6, RHEL 7, have there been any thoughts around being able to migrate those over to the OS tree?
So there is a project that two good friends of mine that are working on called Leap. So so Leap is a part of RHEL. We've built Ansible collections to do Leap for you. So there's a bunch of Ansible collections that I can get you some links for all of it, but we're actually certifying that content where you can do in-place upgrades. Yep. And a lot of that has to depend on which application you're running because of the way OS tree works and the immutable aspects of it. But we're actually looking at stuff around OS tree because, of course, like to get a little technical, /opt today in an OS tree image is not writable. How do we possibly do a container layer there? So yeah, there's a lot of really cool. Come to my next session. We're going to talk a ton about OS tree.
More technical. So when you have a lot of devices on the edge, the inventory itself is a challenge.
Yes, it is. Inventory is always a challenge. What is your CMDB? Who's the actual truth teller in this one? Yep.
So I want to see a feature, hopefully as soon as possible, that makes it a little bit easier for edge devices to create and maintain the inventory, and also that they are doing the automation execution. You have automatically to indicate where is my nearest execution node.
Yep.
That's automatically workflow. And at the moment we build it on group level inventory. Automatically, I want it as a variable for the node itself, and then during the execution, probably they split it out to different jobs. Okay, now go to this execution node, this node go to this execution node. That would be really nice.
So would you like something like a smart mesh? Is that kind of what you're talking about? I have a PRD already in for that. These are things that because of where I came from, these are things I'm always thinking about because connectivity is always a question and having the ability for the mesh to do things like that. So I actually have a developer that is currently working on these type of things. So yes. And inventorying, when you say inventorying of devices, could that be anything from RHEL to network to name your poison? Everything. Go. I can only affect so much outside of the Red Hat world, but that is something we actually had a project to basically map entire networks at one point, and it was canceled. But maybe I can bring that back up if I have enough customers that want it.
And I would think that smart mesh would, to what you were saying earlier, require bidirectional communication, because the mesh would have to talk back to the controller to understand what it's actually doing.
Yes and no. It would need bidirectional. So the mesh is actually smart enough to talk between mesh nodes. So it would need bidirectional to the controller if it didn't have enough information, but this goes to the thing that you and I were talking about earlier about we're actually working on the ability to schedule execution at the mesh or execution plane for if you do have bad network connectivity. So at that point, the mesh would be able to talk as long as it was on the same network. So if you had two mesh nodes in the same network, it should be able to talk. But these are all things that are not existent, but I'm just giving you guys kind of roadmap ideas of things that we're thinking about, and the more feedback that we get that this is something you need, that helps me talk to my friends in engineering about making these things happen. We have an engineer in the back. He's probably looking at me with cold eyes right now.
So you mentioned a second ago that you were working on certified content for doing conversion of Red Hat from one version to another. So I guess my question would be, do you have like a roadmap of what that certified content you're working on is, so we could potentially plan around that eventually being available? Knowing what you're working on means we're not recreating what you're already working on.
It actually is available in the upstream today. I don't know where we're at with making it certified. I know that it is in work, but I know that we've done it for 2 major financial institutions using the upstream stuff, and that's kind of where I hesitate on making something certified until we've had actual customers use things, because we have really good engineers, but they don't run into the same things that you guys are going to run into at scale, because we could scale a lot. But then there's always those weird things that, practices that we've created over the past 20 years that make things a little bit more difficult. But
So I was asking if there's like an idea of which ones you're targeting for certification versus.
6, 7, 7, 8, because those are the ones that are going end of life or already are end of life.
But beyond that one, just other.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to get better at communicating this stuff out and have better channels, but also all of us we get so much information all the time that I'm not going to send you another email. I'm sorry. I don't want another email. Oh, cool. No, that's good feedback. Thank you.
The other thing, we don't have a slide on this, but you've heard a lot if you were at main stage yesterday, or any of the breakouts or labs or Ansible Fest main stage yesterday, you heard a lot about event-driven Ansible, and that certainly is a feature that spans all of the domains that we work on in Ansible, including Edge. And so a lot of things that Chad and I have been talking about and writing about are around, a lot of it around root cause analysis, and then automated remediation. I don't know, Chad, if you want to touch on some of the event-driven stuff you've seen with customers.
Yep. So EDA was another one. We actually did that with a customer before we even thought about bringing it in to do as part of the platform. It was one of the large financial institutions. And what they really did, and I always want to stress this with people, they didn't just go and start auto-fixing switches and devices and things like that. They updated tickets. And I think that's like I ran a help desk at one point in my career, and believe me, level 1 support is a terrible job, because you get a message, it tells you something's broken, and then you have either a script or the knowledge to go and run 1,000 commands to get the information you need. Let's just have EDA do that. It runs a playbook, it goes and runs that script, gets that information. Your level 1 support just became level 2 support, which is fantastic. Or, eventually you say, okay, every time this happens, it's happened 1,000 times, maybe then you get to that auto remediation step. But think that through, because automation is great until automation is not great. I saw automation wipe SSH keys off of every box when I worked at one place, and that was not good. Cool.
Well, I think we'll wrap up a couple minutes early. Thanks, everyone. We can stay after for any one-on-one questions.
Yeah.
Thank
If
you.
there's crazy stuff you want to talk about, I love this. Thank you.